Well, I've got a batch of rocks that have just finished the final stage, so these are supposed to be fully polished. And I'm going to start back with the rock tumbling videos next week. But what I wanted to do is show you the final stage or the final process and give you a few little tips before we start a batch right from the beginning. So I've got to take, first of all, the lid off of the barrel. And then I'm going to kind of push this. This is made out of rubber. And I'm just going to pull that back and see I've got a nice foam here. Now, this is what I wanted to show you as we start. You notice I've got a colander over here, and I'm at a sink. And I'm going to rinse a little bit of this off. What's important to keep in mind when you're doing rock tumbling is never ever pour your grit down the sink, because if you do, eventually the grit will turn like into cement and clog up your sink and your plumbing, and it's going to be very expensive. So that's a really important rule, and that's why I kind of wanted to show you this process up front. Okay, so now this is one batch. I actually have 4 barrels right now, but I'm just going to show you one of them, and I'm not going to show you the dried out polished version just yet, because there's one more step. I just want to get the grit rinsed off of this very well. There's one step left. Even though this has been through all of the polishing, we have to do what's called burnishing. And burnishing isn't really an accurate term. It's more like a rinse. And I do this between every stage. And the reason is, even though I've rinsed these stones off with water, there's still grit there that you can't see. And when the stones dry out, it's going to make them dull. Not maybe completely flat or matte finish, but it's going to make them dull. And so what I want to do is I want to rinse off the rest of that grit. And the way I do that is I'm going to use borax. Now, there are other things that you can use other than borax, but that's my choice. What you want to avoid is like regular dishwashing liquid. Most soaps have chemicals in them and things that are going to be kind of counterproductive in your process of cleaning, because what they'll do is they will begin to degrade the rubber in the barrels. So you got to be really careful what you use for this final rinse. And actually, again, like I said, I do this between every single stage, not just as a final rinse. But what I'm going to use is borax. You can use ivory soap. Some people just buy a cake of ivory soap and they grate it up into, they use like a cheese grater and grate it up. I just prefer borax because it comes powder form already, and it's just a lot easier to work with for me. So I've got my stones poured back into the tumbler, and now what I'm going to do is, whoops, actually I was going backwards there. I've got my borax here. You can read that. And I'm going to use about 3 tablespoons. So there's a 1/4 cup, and then about another half of that will be plenty for what I need. I put that on first because it tends to glop up when you add water, and so this way I can spray the water over it. And then I'm just going to carefully spray water back over. And I'm going to put in more water than I normally will. You'll see when we start tumbling a batch of rocks that I don't normally fill them quite this high with water. But I'm going to for the rinse because I want a lot of good rinsing action there. Okay, so I've got that mixed in. What I'm going to do is put the top back on. Sometimes it's kind of cold here today, so this rubber is a little stiff, so I pull it out just a little bit, get that seal really good. I'm going to put the top back on, push down to make sure it's even all the way around, put the washer back on, and the nut. I'm going to squeeze that tight. And then I give it a little shake just to mix everything up. And that's going to go back on the tumbler for, it depends on the time of day that I do it. Usually 4 or 5 hours is enough. If I do it late in the evening, I'll leave it overnight. It's not going to hurt it, but it doesn't necessarily need 24 hours. Usually, 4 or 5 hours is more than enough. So that's just a step that's called burnishing. But what I really wanted you to notice is, when you get that grit, do not dump that down your drain. You will be sorry if you do. Promise. It's not a happy result. Okay, that's all. Next week, I'm going to start back up again. And what we're going to do is I'm going to take you through polishing a complete batch of rocks, and we'll see just how they change from week to week, because it's a lot of fun to watch, and hopefully that's going to get you started on your own adventure with rock tumbling. So for now, that's all. I'm Jim Pence with See the Light, and I'll see you next week.